1009 Rejections. At age 65, how he built an empire after losing everything. Real story. They say failure is the best teacher. But what if failure became your closest companion for 65 years? What if every door you knocked on slammed shut? What if the world whispered you were nothing, and you almost believed it? This is the story of a man who lost everything, not once, not twice, but dozens of times. A man whose own wife abandoned him. A man who slept in his car, broke and forgotten, at an age when most people are planning their funerals. But here's what they don't tell you about rock bottom. Sometimes you have to dig deeper to find gold. Henryville, Indiana. 1896. 6-year-old Harlan Sanders stood at his father's grave, feeling the weight of the world crushing his small shoulders. His father was dead. His mother had to work. And little Harlan, he became the parent, cooking for his siblings, changing diapers, surviving. Most children play. Harlan cooked. Most children dreamed. Harlan endured. By 7th grade, algebra defeated him. Not because he was stupid, but because putting food on the table mattered more than equations. He dropped out. He left home. At 13, he was a farmhand, working fields that stretched beyond the horizon of his broken childhood. But this was just the beginning of a pattern that would haunt him for decades. At 16, he lied about his age to join the army. Perhaps he thought the uniform would give him the respect his life had denied him. 1 year later, he was discharged. Honorably, yes, but still. Back to nothing. Railroad laborer. Fired after a fistfight. His temper, always simmering, cost him everything. He studied law at night, earned a degree through correspondence courses. Finally, legitimacy. Finally, respect. But then, another fight, this time with his own client. His legal career, destroyed before it truly began. Now here's where the story gets darker, because failure wasn't just professional for Harlan Sanders. It was personal, intimate, devastating. He married Josephine at 19, young love, or perhaps desperation for connection. They had 3 children, but when Sanders lost his railroad job, Josephine made a decision that would scar him forever. She took their children and left, moving in with her parents. Her brother wrote to Sanders, "Josie's at home with her folks where she ought to be. She had no business marrying a no-good fellow like you who can't hold a job." Imagine reading those words. Imagine being told you're worthless by your own family. Sanders hid in the woods near his in-laws' house, planning to kidnap his own children. When they didn't come outside, he emerged from the shadows and made peace with his wife. They reconciled, but the wound never healed. For 39 more years, they stayed together, a marriage built on broken trust and silent resentment. The failures multiplied like shadows at sunset. Insurance salesman at Prudential Life, fired for insubordination. He couldn't hold his tongue, couldn't play the corporate game. His pride was his poison. Then came what looked like salvation. 1920, age 30. He founded the Falls Cities Ferry and Transportation Company, operating a boat across the Ohio River between Jeffersonville and Louisville. Sanders canvassed for funding, became a minority shareholder, was appointed company secretary. For once, something worked. The ferry was an instant success. Passengers streaming across the river, money flowing in, respect finally within reach. But then, October 1929 arrived. The Clark Memorial Bridge opened its massive spans across the same waters Sanders had conquered. Who needed a ferry when you could drive straight across? By December 31st, the ferry operation shut down completely. The charter expired. Sanders' dream of steady income, of finally building something permanent, drowned in the shadow of steel and progress. He didn't wallow. He pivoted. Oil lamp manufacturing. Surely people would always need light, right? Wrong. He invested everything into lamp production, only to discover another company already dominated the market with a superior product. While he was crafting his lamps by hand, electricity was racing across rural America like wildfire, rendering his entire inventory obsolete before he could sell a fraction of it. He watched his life savings evaporate into smoke, his lamps collecting dust in warehouses, monuments to misplaced faith. The pattern was suffocating. Gas station attendant, standing in oil-stained coveralls, pumping fuel for men who looked through him like he was invisible. Tire salesman, pitching rubber to customers who sensed his desperation. Each rejection carved deeper into his soul. Each no echoed louder than the last. By his 40s, Sanders had become what society whispers about in pitying tones. A man whose resume read like a catalog of disasters. A man with calloused hands and hollow pockets. Dreams? He still had those, buried beneath layers of disappointment so thick he could barely remember what hope felt like. His children watched him struggle. His wife's eyes held questions he couldn't answer. And time? Time was running out like sand through fingers that had failed to grasp anything lasting. He was 40 years old. Most men had built careers by then, accumulated something. Sanders had accumulated nothing but scars and stories of what might have been. But here's what nobody tells you about persistent failure. It teaches you something no success ever could. It shows you who you are when the applause stops, when the lights go out, when you're alone with nothing but your reflection and your choices. Decade of 1930. The Great Depression was devouring America's dreams. Sanders was 40 years old, operating a small service station in Corbin, Kentucky. He had one skill nobody could take away from him. He could cook. Those childhood years of feeding his siblings had forged something unbreakable within him. He started serving simple meals to travelers: fried chicken, string beans, biscuits. Nothing fancy, just honest food made with care. People loved it. For the first time in his chaotic life, something worked. Word spread. By the late 1930s, he opened an actual restaurant. The governor of Kentucky even commissioned him as an honorary colonel in 1935, a title that would become legendary. Sanders obsessed over perfecting his recipe. 11 herbs and spices, a secret blend that danced on the tongue. He discovered pressure cooking could reduce cooking time from 30 minutes to 9. Efficiency, excellence, finally, mastery. His restaurant thrived, and then fate delivered another crushing blow. In 1939, fire. His restaurant burned to the ground. He rebuilt. World War II. In 1942, he was forced to shut down. He persevered. Reopened after the war. In 1956, the new interstate highway system bypassed his restaurant completely. Traffic vanished. Revenue collapsed. At 65 years old, Sanders sold everything. His life's work liquidated. His bank account? $105. His monthly Social Security check. Most men would have surrendered to the rocking chair. Most men would have accepted defeat. But Sanders looked at that check and made a decision that would echo through history. He loaded his car with a pressure cooker and packets of his secret herbs and spices. His wife, Claudia, his second wife, his former mistress who'd become his partner, sat beside him. Together, they hit the road. Restaurant after restaurant. Door after door. Sanders would walk in, cook his chicken on the spot, and pitch his franchising idea. For every piece of chicken sold, he'd get a nickel. No. Again and again. Not interested. Too old. Won't work. He was rejected. Once, twice, 100 times, 500 times. They slept in their car, parked outside restaurants, waiting for morning so Sanders could make his pitch again. An old man and his wife living like vagabonds, chasing a dream the world insisted was impossible. 1,000 rejections. 1,009 rejections. But rejection number 1,010. That one was different. Pete Harmon, a restaurant owner in Salt Lake City, Utah, tasted the chicken. His eyes widened. He tried it on his customers. Sales tripled overnight. The man who failed at everything had finally found his calling. Not in his youth, not in his prime, but in his twilight years when society had written him off completely. By 1964, Kentucky Fried Chicken had 600 locations. Sanders sold the company for $2 million. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. He regretted it almost immediately. The new owners changed his precious gravy, simplified his methods. Sanders would make surprise visits to franchises, and if the food disappointed him, he'd push it off the table, shouting it was goddamn slop. The man who'd built an empire from rejection couldn't let go of his creation, even after selling it. He remained the face of KFC until his death at 90, traveling 200,000 miles a year, the most recognizable face in fast food. When he died in 1980, there were 6,000 KFC restaurants in 48 countries, generating $2 billion annually. The man who couldn't hold a job created a legacy that feeds millions daily. So here's the truth they don't teach you. Your past doesn't define your future. Your age doesn't determine your destiny. Your failures don't write your final chapter. Sanders proved that success isn't about never falling down. It's about getting up one more time than you fall. It's about believing in your recipe when the world says you're too old, too broken, too late. Sometimes the greatest victories come from the longest battles. What's your recipe? What dream are you giving up on too soon? Drop a comment below and subscribe for more stories of ordinary people who refuse to stay ordinary.